Since coming to government, Victoria's Environment Minister Ryan Smith has kept a very low profile. Green groups and the opposition say that's because the coalition has no plan to tackle climate change. In his first major broadcast interview, Ryan Smith joined me in the studio a short time ago. Minister, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Since Australia's carbon tax debate began, you've been virtually silent. Have you been instructed to let others do the talking, such as the Premier and Energy Minister?
Absolutely not. I've been working very hard to implement our pre-election commitments, making sure that I cross all the details of my portfolio and really just trying to get across the various aspects of that portfolio. But since the debate's gone on, of course, Minister O'Brien and the Premier have said a lot. I'm in complete agreement with their view of the world, is that the carbon tax is going to hit Victoria the hardest. There's a lot of issues that we need to, that I would have liked to have discussed between the federal and the Victorian government. It's unfortunate we haven't had the opportunity to have that dialogue to date.
Pre-election, you also said, post-election, you've said that you support the idea of a carbon price. Is that still the case? Oh,
look, I think you need to take into account a number of different things. We need to take into account the baseload power that needs to be replaced. We need to take into account the jobs that are going to be affected. We need to take into account how Victorians are going to be hit in the hip pocket. When all those things are taken into account, then we can, I guess, have the debate about how we should move forward.
You are Climate Change Minister, and since coming to power you've removed the former government's white paper on climate change from government websites, but you're yet to develop your own. Do you intend to have one?
Well, the white paper was on the former Premier's website, which obviously is not there anymore. We're working through the various policies, and we've got a number of them that are addressing climate change. We've got policies that encourage people to use energy efficient white goods and other appliances. We've got policies that give money to community groups around Victoria to go down a sustainable line. So there are policies there that we're working towards.
But they're not particularly significant ones, are they?
Oh, I would disagree. I think our policies are ones that aim for a tangible result, that get communities get communities active, and also make sure that there are some tangible outcomes.
Do you intend to release a broad-ranging, long-term plan to tackle climate change?
Well, again, there's a number of policies that we've put into place. I mean, I can continue with them. You know, we've doubled the energy efficiency target. We're doing a number of things to address the target that's in the legislation.
But no long-term plan?
Well, I think we're constrained a little by what's happening at the moment on a federal level. Until we work out what goes through the Parliament, I think we're going to be in a bit of a holding pattern. But we're very committed to implementing the policies that we went to the election on.
Do you personally believe in man-made climate change?
I certainly believe that man has an impact, and I think you'd be mad if you didn't think that man had an impact. But I guess I'd describe myself as more of a environmental, practical person. I think the sort of policies that I look for are those that have tangible outcomes. I think Victorians want their money spent on projects that actually deliver those tangible outcomes, and we've got a number of policies that do help communities deliver those outcomes. Just today I was out in the eastern suburbs announcing funding to Landcare, for instance, the $600,000 that we gave to Landcare today, basically to help them on the ground and help them do the work that the community likes them to do, and certainly the work that the Victorian government likes to see done.
I'll just stop you there for a second. You just said before that you'd be mad if you didn't believe in climate change. I think your Deputy Premier has actually questioned that man has had an impact on the climate.
Yeah, what I said is that you'd be mad if you thought that man didn't have an impact on the environment.
Is Peter Ryan mad?
I think he would agree that man has an impact on the environment.
He didn't want to answer that question the other day at a press conference.
Well, I think he would agree with that. That's certainly my view.
You said this week that you don't know how Victoria would get the electricity it needs if Hazelwood was to be shut down. Does that mean it will never be shut?
Well, I think, as I said before, there's a lot that needs to be answered beforehand. At the moment, we don't have renewable energy that can take up the baseload power that's needed for Victorians. As I said, there's a number of different things, such as job losses, such as the effect on the consumer. Those issues need to be thought through before that debate can happen.
How do you intend to meet the target that's now been passed into law that Victoria will reduce carbon emissions by 20% by 2020?
Well, as I said before, we have a number of policies in place. We've doubled the energy efficiency target. But
surely you're not saying that policy on its own will help reduce carbon emissions by 20%?
Well, I'm saying we've worked through a number of these policies. We took them to the election. We believe they are tangible, on-the-ground policies that will take us towards that target.
One environmental issue that the Coalition has been very proactive about is alpine grazing and allowing cattle back into the Alpine National Park. Let's take a look at what your federal counterpart talked about on the issue last week.
There's a handful of families in one marginal seat in Victoria who the Victorian government wants to grant free agistment. I don't believe that's an appropriate use of a national park.
Is Tony Burke right? Is this decision one that benefits just a very small amount of people?
Well, let me be very clear. This is a policy that we articulated very clearly the best part of a year before the election. And we were elected with a mandate and probably an expectation, I must say, to deliver on all of our election promises. Tony Burke may find that unusual for a government to actually keep its promises when it comes to delivering on its election commitments, but this is a very clearly articulated policy that we're implementing, and I would certainly be happy to sit here and cop if I wasn't delivering on our election promises, but this is a coalition election promise that we are delivering on, and we will continue to do so.
But isn't that the point, that you're delivering on a promise that benefits just a very small group of people?
Well, again, we went to the election with this policy. We were elected to deliver our policies. Indeed, the Leader of the Opposition in Victoria said that he would hold us to account to deliver on all our policies. We are committed to delivering on this policy. And
does it benefit just a very small group?
It's a policy that I think when you look at in terms of potential bushfire, when we're putting the cattle in as a fire mitigation tool, I've looked at this policy carefully. I've looked at it in context of the legislation which requires the Victorian government to protect its national parks from bushfires. I've looked at the federal legislation and the constraints that puts on us. All in all, I think it's a sensible policy, and it's a policy that we're progressing in a very measured and controlled way. It's not as if we're throwing open the gates and allowing a whole herd of cattle to go in at any time. We're trialling the policy, we're making sure we go through it in a very measured and controlled manner.
The federal government seems intent on using whatever powers it can to stop you getting the cattle back in the park. Do you intend to push on no matter what?
Oh, absolutely, and I think Tony Burke said that the powers of the EPBC Act were ones that he would use to stop us in the early stages of this year. He was unable to enact any of those provisions to prevent us, and because we believe firmly that the action that we're taking is not one that will have a significant environmental impact. There are provisions in the Act that Tony Burke can use if he chooses to look at our plan for the future, but he has chosen not to use them because I don't believe that he has the capacity to do so.
Minister, thanks very much for your time.
No worries at all. Thank you.